Good evening, I'm Maham Tawa with the news-making headlines around the world. The National Assembly concludes the second session of the 14th legislative term as Speaker Marzouk Al-Ghanem praises the achievements of Parliament. The Israeli military carries out numerous attacks on Gaza, trying to strike Hamas targets across the Gaza Strip. The Iraqi army denies claims it has withdrawn its troops from the Iraqi-Saudi Arabian border. And Iran and World Six Powers officially resume talks with the sixth round of talks taking place in Vienna. In our first item, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, on the occasion of his country's National Day, wishing him good health and to his country everlasting progress and prosperity. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Excellency President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, on the occasion of his country's National Day, wishing him good health and to his country everlasting progress and prosperity. And His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, sent a similar cable. The National Assembly Speaker Marzouk Al-Ghanem concluded the Assembly session in the 14th legislative term today in a speech in which he said the headline for the Assembly performance in the past 8 months was action. He added that 8 months ago, the Assembly opened its second legislative term with the address of His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, who called in crystal clear messages to the government and to the Parliament to be committed to the following: the need for achievement, importance of protecting the national unity and keeping the country away and safe from feud and division. Mr. Al-Ghanem said His Highness the Emir returned a few days ago to remind us all of these messages and to pinpoint the source of danger which lies in the attempts being made to destroy the government institutions, including the judiciary system, and to drive people to be against constitutional practices. He added that the National Assembly members who represent the people at this critical stage must be in the forefront of those who resist any attempt to dismantle the state institutions and to overthrow the Constitution. The National Assembly Speaker said the Parliament in the past 8 months made unprecedented legislative achievements through hard work and cooperation between the House members on one side and between the Parliament and the government on the other side. The National Assembly Speaker went on to list a large number of laws which were approved by the National Assembly during this term. Among the House achievements, Mr. Al-Ghanem said 12 grilling motions were presented and 10 of them were accepted by the House because they conformed to the Constitution, which is the highest ever number of interpellation motions in any legislative term. The National Assembly said tribute must be paid to the National Assembly for consolidating the culture of parliamentary cooperation and collective work instead of trading verbal accusations and inciting animosity among the members, so that the result was outstanding and fruitful. He said the housing problem was probably the most important example the Assembly recorded, the increase of housing units distribution from 3,000 units a year to more than 12,000 houses a year, showing a 400% increase. This accomplishment was impossible without the spirit of constructive cooperation between the legislative and the executive authorities. The National Assembly Speaker concluded his speech by expressing thanks to all members and to the government for their hard work and dedication. He said at the end, "May God protect Kuwait and its people against any evil under the prudent leadership of His Highness the Emir and His Highness the Crown Prince." As the National Assembly concludes today its second legislative session of the 14th legislative term, His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, delivered a speech to the Parliament. In his address, Sheikh Jaber expressed thanks and appreciation to the National Assembly for consolidating respect to the Constitution and the national principles in many occasions. His Highness added that the Assembly extended assistance to the government in carrying out its responsibilities and providing services to the country and and the citizens. His Highness said that the National Assembly Speaker listed in his closing speech a number of accomplishments which reflected the benefits of close cooperation between the legislative and executive authorities, saying that this is a good thing upon which we should build other actions to strengthen joint and constructive performance in order to face different issues and to fulfill our aspirations and ambitions. His Highness the Prime Minister pointed out that the National Assembly sessions witnessed comprehensive and balanced suggestions by the government and objectives and constructive debate beside fruitful dialogue. His Highness expressed thanks on behalf of himself and the government to the National Assembly Speaker for his wise management of the House sessions, as well as for his deep understanding of the Constitution, which in fact resulted into great achievements in the field of parliamentary work. His Highness also acknowledged the good efforts made by the House members who were keen to establish a new culture in the parliamentary performance and the democratic exercise, which was marked with rationalism and realism. His Highness also thanked the National Assembly staff, including advisors, researchers and technicians, who carried out their duties in the best possible manner. His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mbarak Al-Hamad Al-Subah, the Prime Minister, concluded his address by asserting that the government and the National Assembly were well aware of the challenges and ambitions of the citizens, who hoped that the government and the Assembly would fulfill them as soon as possible. His Highness said, "We hope to meet in the next legislative term to achieve more and more of those ambitions, thanks to the guidance of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Subah, whose wisdom and deep vision maintained the security, peace, unity and prestige of our country." The National Assembly held its last meeting concluding the second session of the Parliament's 14th legislative term under the chairmanship of its Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanem and in the presence of His Highness Sheikh Jabal Mbarak Al-Hamad Al-Subah, the Prime Minister. Minister of Finance Anas Saleh addressed the National Assembly on the economic, monetary and financial conditions and the project budget for the financial year 2014-2015. He added that the foundations for preparing the budget intended to formulate a development budget that would fulfill the aspirations of the citizens in competent services with emphasis on education, medical, social and security services. More on this report with Sarah Faris-Globe.
During the National Assembly session, MPs completed discussions on the report submitted by the Parliament's Budgets and Final Accounts Committee on linking the budgets of ministries and governmental departments for the fiscal year 2014 to 2015. MPs also improved recommendations set forth with a total revenue for the next financial year estimated at 20,069,040,000 Kuwaiti dinars and referred them to the government for consideration. MPs also approved the recommendation to raise the subsidies for Kuwait National Petroleum Corporation and its subsidiaries against exploiting electric power and water.
Actually, in the final session, we have discussed all the financial situation of all the governmental, let's say, aspects. And we have approved all the all the financial situation for these sectors. And after that, we have in the closing session, of course, we have the Speaker of the Parliament. He made a small summary for what been achieved throughout all the session, from the starting to the end. And then the Prime Minister, of course, he had also his speech, and then the session was closed. We are glad that we have ended this session with the marvelous achievements, and we hope that in the second part of October, we will be back here to continue the achievements, and hopefully we succeed with the what we've been planned for the development for the Kuwait and the people of Kuwait.
The Minister of Finance, Anas Saleh, said the financial state of the country faces numerous challenges, including increases in operating expenses, in actuarial deficit, oil and shale gas challenges on oil revenues, in addition to the progress of efficient energy use in advancing economies. He said that one of the most important financial and economic aspects of preparing the project budget for the next financial year is carrying on the process of putting a united standard for the budget functions in order to help link expenditure paths together for better estimates of the budget.
I'm very happy, of the great number of goals that we have reached in this session. And today we talk about the numbers, facts, and these facts talking about the achievement of this assembly. So I'm very glad about this, and also I'm very glad that we are reaching our goals in a small period of time, and hope that we can reach more in the next session.
Sufficient allocations must also be provided for the implementation of vital and necessary projects of the infrastructural and public utilities. He also underlined the need for government agencies and independent institutions to prepare comprehensive studies for their revenues and expenditure in line with the state policies and laws. As the MPs concluded their final session, Al-Saleh highlighted the importance of introducing reforms to the public finance structure by increasing non-oil revenues and cutting down the rate of the current expenses, as well as increase investment expenses. The National Assembly held its final session today before they break for the summer parliamentary recess with the attendance of His Highness the Prime Minister, where MPs approved all of the state's budgets for the fiscal year 2014-2015 and also approved recommendations on a draft budget for the state's economic, financial and monetary position for the upcoming fiscal year. From the National Assembly building, this is Sarah Glubb reporting for English News.
First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah received credentials of newly appointed ambassadors of the Republic of Georgia to the State of Kuwait, Ronald Beritzi. First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah received credentials of the newly appointed Ambassador of the Republic of Philippines to the State of Kuwait, Lamberto Monasanto. Both meetings were attended by Undersecretary of the Foreign Ministry Khalid Sleiman Al-Jarallah, Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Bureau Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al-Mohammed Al-Sabah, and Foreign Ministry Protocols Director Ambassador Dar Al-Ashran. First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah met in his office at the Foreign Ministry today with the Ambassador of the United Kingdom and North Ireland to the State of Kuwait, Frank Baker, on the occasion of his tenor's conclusion. The Foreign Minister also met with the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Belgium to the State of Kuwait, Damien Angelt, on the end of his tenure. The First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister then met with the Ambassador of the Republic of Indonesia to the State of Kuwait, Ferry Adama, on the occasion of his tenor's end. Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah also met with the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Spain to the State of Kuwait, Angel Losada Fernandez, on the occasion of his tenor's conclusion. And finally, the First Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah met with the Ambassador of the Republic of Sri Lanka to the State of Kuwait, Fiji Ratna, on the occasion of his tenor's end. Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid praised all ambassadors on their roles in improving ties between Kuwait and their countries throughout their tenure in Kuwait, wishing them all the best in their future endeavors. The meetings were attended by the Director of the First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister's Bureau, Ambassador Sheikh Dr. Ahmed Nasser Al-Mohammed Al-Sabah. Deputy Prime Minister, Interior Minister and Acting Minister of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs Sheikh Mohammed Al-Khalid Al-Sabah met with Undersecretaries of Interior Ministries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, who are attending the consultative meeting due to be held tonight. Under Secretary of the Ministry of Interior, Lieutenant General Sleiman Al-Fahad, who was present at the meeting, met earlier with the GCC Under Secretaries of Interior Ministries at Kuwait International Airport. Al-Fahad welcomed them and said this meeting comes in due time to discuss new regional and international developments, in addition to following up on coordinating between GCC Interior Ministers for a unified vision. They will also discuss the topics on the agenda and expected resolutions, hoping to ensure security in the region and achieve the aspirations of all GCC citizens. The Israeli military said its air force carried out a precision strike on 15 Hamas targets in Gaza early today morning. One rocket hit houses in the vicinity of a Hamas training camp, causing residents to flee their homes, and according to Palestinian medical officials, 10 civilians were wounded. The Israeli military said the air force carried out the strikes in response to a barrage of rockets fired from Gaza towards southern Israel. The Israeli army said early today a rocket fired from Gaza slammed into a house in the southern Israeli border town of Sderot, causing heavy damage to the structure and a nearby road and knocking out electricity throughout the town. An Iraqi military spokesperson refuted today claims that Iraqi troops had withdrawn from the Iraqi-Saudi Arabian border. Saudi-owned television channel Al Arabiya reported that Saudi Arabia had deployed 30,000 soldiers along the 900-kilometer frontier to prevent any attack by the rebels after Iraqi forces withdrew their protection on the border. Brigadier General Qasem Ata al-Musawi of Iraq said that the news was bogus and transmitted by the hostile mass media to damage the morale of the Iraqi citizens. He added that the border strip is completely under control of the Iraqi troops represented by the Command of Border Forces. A United States cargo vessel loaded with hundreds of tons of Syria's chemical weapons left an Italian port yesterday to destroy the arms at sea as part of the international effort to rid Syria of its chemical weapons stockpile. The naval vessel is taking the cargo, including mustard gas and components of the nerve agents VX and sarin, to international waters to be destroyed. The materials were transferred from a Danish vessel to the U.S. ship earlier yesterday at the port of Gioa Tauro. The deal, backed by the UN and brokered by the US and Russia, was struck amid the threat of US airstrikes triggered by a sarin gas attack on a rebel-held suburb of Damascus. It is expected to head into the open sea, where it will neutralize the chemicals, including mustard gas and the raw materials for sarin nerve gas, with special machinery outfitted in its cargo hold. Six world powers and Iran officially started the sixth round of nuclear talks in Vienna today. The spokesperson for the EU's Foreign Affairs Chief, Catherine Ashton, said the talks got underway shortly today with a plenary session to agree on a schedule for the talks over the coming days. Iran's uranium enrichment program is the main dispute at the talks. Iran is pushing back against US demands for concessions as negotiators haggle over what curbs Tehran must accept on its nuclear program to win an end to the sanctions that continue to choke its economy. Both Iran and the six world powers, United States, Russia, China, Britain, France and Germany, want an accord by July the 20th. China and South Korea have reaffirmed their opposition to North Korean nuclear tests during a visit by Chinese President Xi Jinping, which is being seen as a snub to the North. South Korean President said China and South Korea agreed that the North's denuclearization should be realized by all means. The statement follows a series of missile tests by North Korea. Xi's visit comes a day after North Korea fired short-range rockets into the sea. Last year, North Korea carried out its third nuclear test, and there are reports that it could be planning a fourth. Xi called on the six countries involved in the North's nuclear talks to resume negotiations. Ukraine's parliament voted for a new defense minister today as President Petro Poroshenko pledged to stamp out the corruption that left the country's armed forces faltering before a pro-Russian insurgency. Poroshenko appointed Colonel General Valery Heteya as defense minister and Lieutenant General Viktor Muzahenko as chief of the military general staff. During a speech before the vote, which was given a standing ovation by the parliament, Poroshenko implored members of parliament not to stand with those who want to undermine trust in our military, who, in unison with Russian propaganda, want to dishonor our army. But while talking up the revival for the nation's forces, the president was hacked by a number of parliament members who accused certain quarters of the military of killing children during their operations. And moving on to our last item, the last trading session this week at Kuwait Stock Exchange ended on a red note with all the main indices down. The weight index slipped 2.18 points to 475.3 points. The price index slipped 21.98 points to 7,004.31 points, and the KSX 15 ended the day at 1,163.19 points. That's a down of 8 points. The session saw 2,621 transactions worth about 11 million Kuwaiti dinars, with around 123 million shares changing hands. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Well, with that, we conclude our news bulletin. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant time. I'm Maham Power. Before we go, we remind you once again of our main top stories. Have a pleasant time and good night. The National Assembly concludes the second session of the 14th legislative term as Speaker Marzouk Al-Ghanem praises the achievements of this parliament. The Israeli military carries out numerous attacks on Gaza, trying to strike Hamas targets across the Gaza Strip. The Iraqi army denies claims it has withdrawn its troops from the Iraqi-Saudi Arabian border. And Iran and World Six Powers officially resume talks, with the sixth round of talks taking place in Vienna.